I'll be exploring the Biocon India case study, and there are two questions. The first question, we explore both the advantages and disadvantages of starting and operating a pharmaceutical firm or clinical trials company in India. So for advantages, first we have cheaper human capital. From a case study, we understand India had a large pool of English-speaking scientists and professionals. From a salary perspective, you could hire 6 to 7 Indian PhDs for the salary of a US PhD. This is massive savings to the fixed cost. Genetically diverse population. This is very helpful when recruiting for clinical studies and to whom companies could eventually sell their products. Researchers need easy access to ethnic genetic structures for their work. Lower production cost. From Exhibit 2, the cost of running clinical trials in India is less than 50% of that in the US, regardless of trial objectives, statuses, subjects, and study duration. Bear in mind that clinical trials took up nearly 60% of total drug development cost. Running clinical trials in India instead of in US will mean huge savings. Public government support. The Indian government recognized the medical biotech industry and set up both internal and external supports to encourage the industry's growth, especially in the areas of R&D and biotech facilities. Examples are setting up Department of Biotechnology in the Ministry of Science and Technology in 1986. Some Indian states such as Karnataka built biotech parks and eased tax, duty and lease obligations for biotech park residents. Private support. Biotech started to attract venture capital funding. Despite a small amount compared to the funding they got from banks, government sources, and internal resources, this goes to show there's growing interest from private investors. Market opportunity. Rapid growth for clinical research in India is expected in the next decade, when this case was written in 2008. Contract research organizations, or CROs, like Lotus Labs, were emerging as key players in the market. Study predicted that Indian CROs could grow their global market share from 0.7% in 2002 to 20% in 2010. High growth potential means opportunity for Clinigen to be a key CRO player. Disadvantages. Questionable credibility as a CRO. Indian CROs, mainly known for their BA studies, although a few were beginning to offer clinical trials services. Some MNCs were wary of outsourcing critical and sensitive tasks to a largely unproven Indian industry, so Clinigen must put in extra effort to prove itself to be a reliable CRO. Cost of competition. Foreign CROs such as Quintel and the in-house data management centers of big pharmaceutical firms like GSK and Pfizer were serving higher value market needs, especially data management and phase 3 clinical trials, as we can see from Exhibit 3. Whereas Clinigen is still serving a low to medium value segment of the value chain. Despite the higher profit potential, competing with MNCs up the value chain will result in higher costs to Clinigen in terms of their financials and their culture. Disruption to existing corporate culture. Mazana Shaw and team were concerned that Clinigen could outshine Biocon and Syngene given the growth potential in clinical trials market. To keep up with Clinigen's rapid growth, Biocon needs to channel their resources and hire a lot of employees fast. Organizational designs and procedures may need to be modified to better manage the influx of new hires. Clinigen will have to move from loose structures and casual hierarchies to a more mechanistic organization. Challenges to employee loyalty. Employees typically need about 2 years to inculcate the Biocon culture. The nature of clinical trials requires that much of the work be done in partner hospitals. Physically dispersed among trial sites, rarely able to wander the corridors or enjoy Biocon's facilities, the Clinigen employees could easily end up disaffected, or at least loyal only to Clinigen rather than its parent group. More risk. Clinical trials with humans carry significant risk to the sponsoring CRO. Despite all industry and government controls in place, the CRO still bear the risk in terms of financial losses. From failed clinical trials, compensation to victims, ethical challenges for employees eager to achieve results, and unsure where subjectively measured good activities lay. Damage to reputation and even organizational survival if negative externalities such as companies' impact on humans and society are raised. Unwanted publicity. In the media, Biocon enjoyed coverage ranging from approval to praise so far. But if a Biocon subsidiary were to run clinical trials in India, it could invite negative and destructive attention. The issue of human participation in clinical trials grew more complex with the use of illiterate and arguably ill-paid subjects, raised questions of patient consent and abuse. Some Clinigene staff were aware that clinical trials could easily be politicized, especially when a Western MNC used an Indian company like Clinigene to test drugs on Indians for largely Western use. Biocon might find itself accused of deliberately inviting neo-colonial imperialism, foreign exploitation, and subjugation to the West. How might both advantages and disadvantages influence Biocon's decision about whether to aggressively invest in climate change? Most Indian biotech and pharmaceutical firms counter on organic growth or acquisition, and not so much about outside funding to fuel any expansion. Instead of aggressively investing into Clinigene, the safer approach is to buy a growing CRO, but keep an arm's length from the Biocon culture. Biocon could access the expertise and profits without having to compromise their culture. It's also the only way to diversify risk and uninvited publicity faced by any large CRO. So with that, I end my presentation, and I thank you for your time and for listening.